Welcome to another episode of Relentlessly Resilient, where real people share real-life experiences and the tools they've developed to move forward and live their best lives. I'm Jennie Taylor.
And I'm Michelle Scharf. Today we're joined with David Martin, the founder and director of BeatALS Benefit Concert. Dave, we are so excited to hear about this great event you're having. Tell us a little bit about your mission and what ALS is, and then go in and tell us about this big event you're putting on.
So ALS, commonly known as Lou Gehrig's disease, is amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, and it's a neurodegenerative disease that basically, in simple terms, means that the muscle fibers that connect the brain to the muscles are deteriorating and become basically dead, taking away all muscle function from its patients. And then it is a terminal disease, and the average lifespan is 2 to 5 years. And it can range from a quick diagnosis that's short-lived, and there have been patients that have actually lived up over 10 years. And so our mission is to educate individuals about ALS. As you guys know, the Ice Bucket Challenge took place in 2015 and raised about $113 million, had over 100 million shares on social media, and a really great push in the right direction for the disease and for the research that was being done. And we found, 6 years later, that there's still a real misconception about what ALS is, and that because it's known as two different terms, Lou Gehrig's disease and ALS, people don't really understand that it's one and the same. And so just the sheer difference of the terminology can lead people a little bit to be unsure about what it means. So that's our first and foremost mission, is to educate people. And we educate people through telling real-life stories of individuals with ALS. All of our benefit concerts do have a real component to them where we will interview and feature patients in the ALS community. We'll talk about their life prior to ALS. We'll talk about their family, their careers, their loves, hobbies, all of those things, because we believe that the disease is not the defining characteristic of these individuals, that they are so much more. But we also acknowledge that the process of which people go through to find out the diagnosis for ALS is very unique. It's not a one-time doctor's appointment where they check you and then they say, yep, you've got ALS, and then you move on. It's a series of tests, from MRIs to CAT scans to nerve testing to muscle testing, and it's very arduous. There's a lot of uncertainty throughout that process, and really doctors are trying to rule out everything else and don't want to come to the conclusion of Lou Gehrig's disease. So they're trying to find any possible diagnosis that does not involve ALS. But as that diagnosis comes, it's terminal, and there's no cure currently. So it's not a great diagnosis to receive. And so we do talk about people's experience as they go through that process of finding out they have ALS. And then lastly, in terms of education, we like to talk about what people how their mindset changes post-diagnosis. When you have a timestamp on your life, you think about different things. You are passionate. You are focused on different things, and that's been the most inspirational part for me in my line of work, because I'm able to talk to people who really have a really clear perspective of what matters most in life. And that's what we hope audiences will take away from our concerts, in addition to a great night of music. But they will say, I am not really focusing on the things in my life that matter most right now. I'm getting sidetracked by so many things that really, in fact, don't matter. And so that is an education component. I don't think you can kind of lay out in a textbook or in an instructional video. This is just a person who has this reality in their life, and they have no other choice but to kind of take on that new perspective. And it's been really, really inspiring for us. So our mission is to educate, but then we also do these concerts with music of the BeatALS, all the greatest hits from, I Want to Hold Your Hand to Here Comes the Sun to Hey Jude, and music that audiences just love. And so they're able to come and kind of get lost in the music for a couple of hours, and the words and the lyrics and these Beatles songs are really inspirational. So they fit right into our mission. And then the last component of our threefold mission, which is to educate, entertain, and then the last one is to inspire. We hope people feel better upon coming to our concerts and do have a greater resolve after our concerts to really make more of their life. Creighton Ryder, I was introduced to Creighton by Kellyanne's dad, Mark, and he's had ALS now for 12 years and continues to live life to the fullest. But his motto is live until you die. And he has done that, lived that way, and it's inspirational for me. And I think there have been other people who have kind of taken that motto and applied it to their own life. So, and long story short, that's basically our threefold mission, which is to educate, entertain, and inspire.
I love it. It's an awesome mission, and I one I fully relate to. My husband passed away from cancer. And when he was giving the diagnosis, and at first we were told 10 years, then we were told 3 to 5 years, and he ended up living 22 months. It is so true that when you get that diagnosis, life changes. All of a sudden, things don't matter. How somebody squeezes toothpaste, like the daily things inside your house, like how the toilet paper roll is, whose underwear are on the floor, did they make it into the laundry basket, how do you squeeze your toothpaste, like none of those things matter any longer. And suddenly it's like we have to work, we have to bring in money, and what are the most important things to do between now and the time that I'm no longer on this earth, right? And so, and that's different for everyone who gets that diagnosis. For my husband, he put off vacations with the family a lot of time, and he's like, I want to take a cruise with my children. I want to go take my grandchildren and my children that can go with us to Disney World. He had some very specific
creating
things.
Those memories.
He wanted to create some memories as best as he could. And I'll be honest, it wasn't great because my husband was in a lot of pain and not super healthy when we went. But he did his very best to create the best memories that he could. And so I love this mission to inspire other people who we're all living our lives. We're so busy. We get caught up in a lot of stuff. But really, honestly, we're all on a clock. And we don't actually know when the clock is going to be up.
It's so true.
So it's a great opportunity to kind of have fun, reflect, but also reprioritize our lives, right?
And David, I appreciated what you said about the diagnosis process because, like Michelle, what you're talking about, this diagnosis process, when John was diagnosed with cancer, there was a certain battery of tests with certain doctors and medical providers who could confirm he has cancer. He has this kind of cancer. Mm-hmm. And yet ALS, David, you mentioned how it's kind of found by ruling out what it's not. If you've got symptoms, can you tell our listeners maybe what some of the symptoms might be that will lead a patient into then having that battery of you're getting the MRI, you're having the nerve tests, the muscle tests. What other illnesses might they rule out before they come to the conclusion of ALS? And I guess what you're saying is there is no blood test, medical test, machine that can test and say for sure it is ALS. ALS is more kind of this conglomerate of it's not the other things, right?
Exactly. So what will happen is there is any number of more prominent symptoms, one of which is drag leg, which is you start losing functionality to one of your legs. You might experience pain in your back. A lot of people will lose the ability to grip, so their hands and arm muscles stop working. Many will experience difficulty swallowing and or speaking, and then some will have falls. Unexplainable, a person that we just barely benefited. One of the symptoms that he experienced was when he was playing football, would step back to do a pass and just would fall over. And this was a very athletic person.
Wow.
Had no problem with physical activity. And then the other component in his situation was fatigue. So a lot of these symptoms are very common. I mean, difficulty swallowing or difficulty speaking, obviously that's going to be more of a red flag, but to kind of lower back pain or, my legs aren't really working, maybe I've got bad knees. And so you go through this process of all of these different tests, And doctors are trying to, like you said, rule out everything else and then the conclusion of ALS. And the problem is with ALS too is blood work will come back clean. CAT scans and MRIs for the most part will come back clean. And so you're basically told there's nothing really that we can see that's wrong, but then as they go through more tests and a deeper investigation of what's going on, then they start seeing more of these underlying conditions. And so that's what's super hard. And oftentimes they come on slow. Some people will live with symptoms of ALS for years. And it's not until this kind of, little lack of strength in my leg becomes so unbearable that I just go, I've been dealing with this for, a year and a half. I probably should just go get it checked out. And then the doctors will say, you've had this ALS, diagnosis for longer than what you currently...
Than what you're aware. And we all know, like
currently
you said...
experiencing...
ALS is Lou Gehrig's disease. Obviously, he was, one of the most beloved baseball players that ended his career, it ended his life. Can you tell us some of the gender impact of ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease? The people I know and can think of in my own life have all been men. Do women get ALS? Is it just predominantly male, or is it exclusively male?
It's not. The statistic is 1 in 350 men and 1 in 450 women.
Well, it's not that much different.
So the number is, so the difference between the genders is not really, large. It's pretty close. And I've worked with more males than females in my line of work, but there definitely, as I've worked with different families and things, ALS definitely affects women as well. And what's difficult too with ALS is they're not really able to discover or find out really the cause, right? So that's the real question mark right now with Lou Gehrig's disease and ALS is the gene that impacts ALS can't really be traced to any underlying conditions. Some studies have found that it's more common in military. So if people served in the military and they can, there's a decent population of ALS patients who have had military experience, but 90% of all ALS cases are what they call sporadic. So there is no known cause. And that can be very, very frustrating for not only patients but doctors as well, because it's not preventable. It's not treatable. They do have some. They have one Radicava, which is the only FDA-approved medication, which can, in some situations, slow down symptoms and the progression. But it's not a guarantee, and it's pretty expensive. So, but the 10% of ALS patients are genetic, so it is a hereditary, can be. And if it runs in your family, it's a 1 in 2 chance of carrying the gene. So if it runs in your family, that can be pretty difficult as well, knowing that 1 in 2, 50%. And so, it comprises 10%, so it's not the most, not even close to the most common, but the sporadic ALS is the one that they're still just trying to find causes and connecting patients to life experience. There's a guy who has ALS right now, and he has gone through probably over 100 different treatments worldwide.
Wow.
And he's done well for himself financially, so that's provided him an opportunity to take a more aggressive approach
to explore
to
those
combating
avenues.
the disease.
Yeah.
But he and this isn't fact. This is just kind of him through his experience saying, I received a concussion. I was in a really bad skiing accident, and it opened up some parts of my spine that maybe and so we're just kind of grasping at straws and trying to find the causes of ALS. And so, as they continue to do research and they continue to do studies, we're moving forward, but the rate of research is it's pretty slow.
Wow. We need to take a break, and when we come back, let's talk about the concert and tickets, where we can get them, when the benefit is, and then I guess you have a few little options for schools for fundraisers.
Sure.
And so we'd love to hear about that as well. We'll be right back. Back. David, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm excited to hear about this concert, and tell us about where we can get our tickets, where it's going to be held, and tell us more about the options for fundraisers.
Yeah, so as a former school teacher, I taught school for 6 years and then had a vocal hemorrhage, actually, that kind of took me out of the profession, but have since recovered and have been able to continue performing and making music in the community, which has been awesome. But kind of stepping away from education opened this door to the world of benefit concerts and the world of ALS. And I decided to kind of take my experience in the classroom and provide a service to schools where we come in and we teach the kids, anywhere between 10 to 15 BeatALS songs, all performed with a live band and an orchestra and dancers and technical theater. It's kind of a big production. And we've done now, this will make 6 or 7 concerts that we've done at the high schools and junior highs. And so the 2 upcoming concerts that we have this October, the 6th, next week, will be at Jefferson Junior High School. And that's going to have around 170 participants. It'll be an outdoor concert at the school, and we'll have a live band, like I said, and 170 kids. So that's super fun. And then the following week, it'll be at Hillcrest, with Hillcrest High School, but we're performing it at Midvale Middle School. So it's been a blast. I feel for teachers and the workload that they have and the experiences that they're trying to provide for their kids. And so if I can come in and take a little bit off their plate, take over some of the teaching, take over putting together the concert, and, forming some fun and good friendships with these teachers as well. It's just kind of a win-win for me. And the kids, I feel like, are a very, very receptive audience.
So how do you get your tickets?
So if you just go to BeatALSbenefit.com, it'll say purchase tickets for the Jefferson concert, which is, like I said, October 6th. And then the Hillcrest concert tickets will be available shortly.
Okay.
So, David, what does the process look like when you're working with a school? I mean, 150 kids, it's not like they're going to learn 10 to 15 BeatALS songs in a single setting. Can you walk us through maybe, let's say a school wants to be involved? How did they come to be involved? How much time do you spend in the classroom? What does it take to actually put this concert together?
So my standard time frame is typically about 6 weeks, and I will attend various classes, choir classes, and that's anywhere between like an hour to an hour and a half. Most of the concerts that I've done, I approached one school and said, "Hey, can we do this? We have this idea," and this was Benyon Junior High School back in 2017. I said, "I've got this idea. Would you be willing to let us come and do it?" And my friend, who was the choir teacher at the time, said, "Sure." So we taught after school, and so I ended up doing about 17 or 20 rehearsals with the kids for about an hour to 2 hours. And that was longer than I would have liked, but kind of a first-time go. It was experimental. We were kind of figuring things out. Well, after that, a friend of mine who was a teacher at Elk Ridge Middle School said, "Hey, I love this idea. How about you come and do this here?" Well, because the teacher was so on board, we got together and picked the song set, and then he was able to teach a lot of the music during class. I would come in and help out, but it wasn't all on my shoulders to come in and teach. And so he was able to get the community involved, the faculty. We ended up having 400 kids in that concert and ended up raising $12,000 for that concert, which was
awesome.
so cool.
That's so awesome.
So a sold-out audience at Bingham High School, which was about 1,500 audience members, and so cool so amazing. We really just had a blast. And so teachers will approach me and say, hey, I'm interested in doing this. So we figure out the song set. We figure out the day of the concert, where it's going to be held, the needs that they have. We do T-shirts for all of our concerts as well, tie-dye or fluorescent, to give the kids just kind of I'm part of something, fun, and I'm part of something, exciting. But my average time is usually about 30 hours of time going to the schools and working with the kids. So, and right now it's pro bono, so I'm not really getting paid to do that. I'm just trying to get our mission out there, and then hopefully it'll take. And our goal kind of now is to get donors and sponsors to see the value of what we do, not only providing a service for the ALS community, but also, serving the schools, right? Providing kids, teenagers, meaningful opportunities. And as we've done post-concert write-ups, questionnaires or surveys of the kids after the fact, we have found that the kids really, really like the experience. They have said, I love this song. I love learning about ALS. I loved meeting these people and their families. I had no idea that people live their life this way. I had no idea that this was a thing. And I loved being able to sing a song and use my talents to actually make a difference. And that's what I think is just so fun, because you do Christmas concerts and spring concerts and all of these different songs that are fine, but they're really just strictly entertainment. They're really just strictly kids learning the song, developing some skills along the way, but,
it's really awesome that you're basically empowering the kids to be a part of a movement, to be able to raise money and make a difference in somebody else's life. That's powerful.
Well, and at the Elkridge concert, we had Darren Redden, who has since passed, come up on stage in his wheelchair with his family for 1,500 people, and just have 1,500 people clapping and singing, and phones are out, and he's doing 360s in his wheelchair. And you can't write that. You can't recreate that if you tried. But so many concerts that we've done, our main message is to take a sad song and make it better. Classic line from Hey
Beatles
Jude, right?
line, right? Exactly.
Classic Beatles line, because all of us have sad songs. It's unavoidable. And it can be anything. It can be depression. It can be anxiety. It can be terminal disease. It can be loss of loved one. It can be poverty. It can be disaster. It can be anything. Like, sad songs are inevitable. But we have found with our ALS patients that they don't, sink down. They don't give up. They don't fall into this depressive state that completely paralyzes them mentally. They lose almost all functionality to their body, but their brains and their spirits and their attitudes stay relatively positive. Obviously, I'm not there for all of the dark times. Christopher Clark, who was my inspiration behind this, said, you get 15 minutes a day to cry. You get 15 minutes to let it all out, and then you get back to work and you get back to living your best life. And so, we are trying to do that. We're trying to take situations and difficult situations and helping people see the positive.
Hey, David, can we talk about that for a minute? That personal
please.
Connection you have with Chris. I love the Beatles line, take a sad song and make it better. And we do all have sad songs in our lives. Can you tell us how maybe Chris's story might be part of your sad song and even the sad song of this foundation, and how that kind of became the motivation or the inspiration to make it better? Do you mind telling us his story a little bit, maybe your connection to him and how it's now become that it is?
Yeah, so in 2016, flashback one year, in 2015, I did the show, The Musical Ghost at Hale Center Theater in West Valley, and Chris was the director, and we just kind of formed this friendship, and it was pretty casual. The rehearsal process went kind of as normal, and then the run of the show was pretty standard for me. And then later that year, in the wintertime, December, they had fired somebody from another production he was working on, and he said, "Do you want to come in and fill into this spot?" And I was like, "This is not going to work, but I'll try it anyway," and ended up being a great experience. But throughout that process, he had started experiencing pain in his back, really to the point where he would have to lay down in rehearsals. And so, he's 44 years old, thinking, I'm just getting old and I'm not, as young as I used to be. And so it just kind of had been this constant thing. Well, we had set up a lunch date back in, December. He's like, we should go to lunch and we'll talk about your life and talk about your career and talk about what you want to do, because I was kind of a crossroads. Well, we get together in March. He kept the lunch date and shows up to Cubby's in Lehigh and walking with a cane, and I made some off-color comment about, what happened, and he was just like, no, that's not it, but let's chat about it. And through the course of that conversation, he told me that he had Lou Gehrig's disease and that it was terminal, and I had no clue, had no idea. And the rest of that conversation, we actually just talked about me. We kind of touched on ALS and kind of what he was thinking, but we just talked about my future, and it was just a great conversation. He's a tremendously caring and sensitive person. So I just went home and cried and thought, what is going on? This doesn't happen to people. This is something that happens to other people, right? Not to people that I know. And so I had this idea that we were doing these BeatALS concerts at my junior high school, and let's do one and raise money. But then over the course of the next 6 months, I would end up leaving my position as a teacher, but I still wanted to do this benefit concert for Chris. And really the whole inspiration behind Chris Clark is that he revolutionized theater. He was the director of the department at UVU. He did his master's over in England. He was a film actor, a stage actor, a brilliant director. He was a pianist. His life was about changing people's lives with art. And so it was a kind of a direct, a really clear transfer for me to find a person who I cared about deeply, who had impacted me through art, to then say, let's use that same tool of the live experience, the synergy that exists between audience and performer, and the ability a performer has to take a text, to take a song, to take a show or a theme and convey that to people where they are changed. A director I once worked with said the difference between theater and film is that change happens, but when you're doing theater, you're there in person when that takes place. And you can't recreate that, right, in the film setting or a TV show or something like that. So Chris was wonderful enough to let me use his experience as kind of a springboard for what we were doing. Our first concert we did was May of 2017. We raised $10,000. We had 46 performers, a full choir, a full orchestra, and he was our keynote speaker. This was really early on into his diagnosis, but he, in an interview with KSL, actually said, so much good has come from this diagnosis, and as horrible of a disease as it is, and it's still weird to think that he's gone. He died last June in 2020, and he had been my pillar of light, my beacon to say, like, I'm doing this for you, man, every day as I, basically do this work without a paycheck. And it's not about the money, but at some point in time you have to provide for your family. But to say, like, it doesn't matter, man. You impacted my life. You changed my life, and so I'm going to do everything in my power to tell your story and to be, to honor you through our efforts. And we've continued to do that. And Chris and Lisa and their family are an inspiration. I don't know if you ever get a chance. I mean, Lisa works for BYU TV and is one of the most inspirational people that I've ever had the privilege of knowing. So.
Oh, I appreciate you telling us that backstory and helping to connect those dots. I recently heard Lisa speak on losing her husband to ALS and that journey from the family side, but I love to see how you as a friend have stepped in and while he was still living and even now in his wake, to carry on that legacy. And like I said, I'm doing this for you, man. Like, that didn't stop the day he passed. In fact, it probably fueled a greater need to carry on in what you're doing. And I just love that. Love how you're there for his memory, his family, for Lisa and their children and all the others in the performing community who just love that man and miss him every bit as much as you do. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, David, we're hoping you can tell us what resilience looks like to you, both in your foundation and in these concerts, and also you in your personal life, to hopefully help inspire our listeners as you've educated and entertained. Let's kind of hone in on that inspiration piece of what does resilience look like to you. We'll be right back. All right, David, we've loved learning about your foundation, about your friendship with Chris and others that you know that have struggled with this terrible disease, ALS, your love for music and performing and knowing that entertainment truly can educate and inspire. And we'd love to hear what you think resilience looks like in your life.
I would say resilience is probably a pretty, standard answer of taking a very difficult situation, kind of defying all odds and overcoming it. ALS is not something that you can beat. It's not something that if you strap up your boots and turn and face this thing head on, that it's going to cure it, or that that you're going to somehow get through it without its diagnosis. And so I think resilience means that you take your opportunities, you take your situation, and you make the most of that situation. That we do have sad songs, and there is no way to avoid that, but we don't have to be sad in those songs, and we can take from those difficult situations and life lessons and make the most out of it. And the people in the ALS community, to me, are the definition of resilient, because they have no choice but to move on. They have no choice but to wake up the next day knowing that they are losing every aspect of their life. When Chris lost the ability to play the piano, what does that do to a person? When he lost his ability to speak, what does that do to a person? Well, for him, he continued to write. He continued to direct even when he was only able to say 3 or 4 words to the cast about what they were supposed to do. And so as I've seen people with ALS live essentially their best life, that's resilience, as an example for me. And so in my life, I really don't have any excuses, right? if I'm dogging it, I really have nobody but myself to kind of call to action and say, you're better than this. And even though I'm human and I don't have a terminal diagnosis to kind of put me in that position, I try every single day to remember Chris, to remember others, and to say I owe it to the people who have it harder than I do to make a difference. And if they can't do it for themselves, I'm going to do everything I can to help them and those like them. And that's been my motto. And for me in this organization, I basically have worked the last going on 7 years for nothing. I haven't taken a cut for my work. This is, thousands of hours. But I believe in it, and I'm hoping at some point in time to get some donors and some sponsors to say, it's not going to be the high life by any stretch, but it would be nice at some point to make somewhat of a career out of what I do and to be able to provide for my family. But until that time happens, ALS isn't stopping, and so neither am I.
Oh, I just love that so much.
Powerful story.
I love what you said about the ALS community embodying resilience, even though not one of them is going to beat their disease. And we could unpack that for quite a while. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we think resilience means we win. Mm-hmm. We hang in there long enough and we come out up on top, and we're going to keep fighting and scrapping until we are victorious against whatever it is in our lives, when in reality, maybe the greatest victory is knowing you can't beat or fix or change whatever you're facing, and yet you're still going to get out of bed in the morning. You're still going to live your best life. You're still going to inspire those who will long outlive you to do and be beautiful things, and loving that concept that it isn't necessarily the victory at the end of the battle that defines resilience. It's the fight. Yeah. It's and that is the process more than the outcome, because there's so many things we can't control in life in terms of what the outcomes will be. And yet we can control how we fight day to day and how we carry on and how we continue to, in Chris's case and so many others, motivate and inspire people along the way. And then I love what you said. So what's my excuse? Like, man, I probably should stop complaining because I've got it pretty good. I spent part of September in New York City with some different events honoring the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And I was in a room. I was in a room with some military families who had lost loved ones in the war on terrorism. I was in a room with some wounded warriors who had lost legs or arms or both, and firefighters or their surviving families. And there was this man who was speaking for a quick minute, and he'd lost both of his legs in the war. And he said some people were just so surprised at how positive he was. They'd look at him and say, "Hey, you've lost both of your legs. Why in the world are you so positive?" And his response to them was, "You still have yours. Why are you so negative?" And I just thought, whoa, okay, quiet, mic drop. I'll stop complaining about the things that drive me crazy in life or that I'm so worried about. But that inspiring attitude when you've seen someone going through something that we would all just crumble under, to say, you know what, if they can do that, I guess I can face my that, whatever my that might be.
Well, and it does happen to people. That's what's just so bizarre to me. It's like we say, how could this happen to me? It's like it happens. Like it's just a fact. It's a reality. Life happens to people. Yeah. And if you happen to fall if you have to fall in the place where that happens to you, that is life, and it's hard. But you start saying, like, I'm complaining about this where across the world someone is actually living in turmoil, or they are experiencing. I mean, it's kind of bizarre. You scroll through your feed on social media and you'll see earthquake devastates this part of the world, and then the next picture is somebody posting something about some dish they had the night before, and you're going, what is this world that we live in where we are so used to compartmentalizing or categorizing these drastically different life events?
Right.
And it doesn't really impact us anymore. And so I have to start saying, like, well, at the end of our concert on the 10th of September, we did a benefit for a guy in American Fork, and we finished the concert, and I got in my car. I was driving, and they were ahead of me. The family was ahead of me in their van, right, their wheelchair-accessible van. And as I watched them turn down the street, I said, we just had an awesome concert, and it probably was one of the high points of their life, and they are going to go back home to this reality that they live in of caring for their father who's got, a terminal disease. And I'm saying, like, that's just we don't think about it. We don't think about people's realities and what they're going through because we're so wrapped up. And I think, if anything, for me, I'm always just trying to push myself out of thinking about myself and trying to think about other people, because people live very difficult lives, and that whatever I can do to help alleviate that in a small way. I know it's probably insignificant, but I'm like, I'll do my best to do that,
I love your story, and I love your heart. We live in a society that is so goal-oriented, so we always think about big things, big goals, big dreams, big whatever, and then what we're going to do to get to that thing, right?
Right.
But this is something that I tried to relate to my husband, and he didn't get it until he got his diagnosis. I'm like, it's really not about the destination ever. It really isn't. It is about our journey. And one of the things my husband said to me when he did get his diagnosis is he turned to me and said, I should have taken all of those vacations you wanted me to take. I think that sometimes we get so focused on the goals that we forget to live life in the moments in between. The goals are great. I'm big into that. I help my friends set goals and achieve goals and whatever, and I support that. But I think it's really important to also be present for the day that we're living. This might be our only last day. Yeah. Last night I had an opportunity to drive up through the Alpine Loop and just take in the leaves, the falling and changing color of the leaves, and it was so breathtaking. And I stood in a meadow. I walked out with my friend onto this meadow, and we were kind of in a meadow where we couldn't see anyone else around us. And I looked up, and we could see all these colors in the mountains all around us. And I thought, we live on such an amazing planet. And this moment is so beautiful. And I can never recreate this moment. and I just took it in and really appreciated the moment I was in. And I'm so happy that I have the ability to appreciate it, because I think in some ways I'm unique. I watched my husband have to surrender life and leave. And, people that are suffering with it, whether it's a terminal illness or whatever their struggle may be, we all struggle with a lot of things, but we could, especially right now, take that drive because the leaves are going to fall. They're going to be gone. And actually, it changes every hour
and
up
just
there.
Capture that moment.
Just capture the moment. It's fleeting, right?
Yeah.
But we can take in a deep breath and enjoy the place where we're at right now. It doesn't have to be later.
Well, and concerts might seem insignificant. I mean, it's a lot of work for not a lot of money. There are far more probably efficient ways in some respects to raise money, walks or rides or golf tournaments or silent auctions or any number of fundraising efforts that take place. But for me, as I'm on stage with my friends who've got ALS, and I see the audience and I see them, and I go, that's it.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. That's the moment.
To me is what these people are just basking in this moment, and they're saying, like, life sucks right now, but for the next 3 minutes as we're singing the na-nas at the end of Hey Jude, and I'm with my friends and with my family, like, that's it. And I have family members of people who have attended our concert, family members of our patients who have just said, like, we felt like rock stars.
Absolutely.
We felt like
and you get the adrenaline, you get the dopamine, you get the natural high of the moment. And you're right, that synergy between those that are participating in the audience and those that are on stage, that you can't recreate that.
Mm-hmm. And I love that. And honestly, like, it fuels my fire. And concerts are hard. Like, there's a lot that goes into it and so many moving parts, but I just go, when we're there and everybody's there and it pays off, I just, like,
well, David,
it's enough to do it again.
Yeah, thank you for doing it again, for all of these years, for all of these young people who you've helped empower to be part of the give back and the charity. Hopefully that, with enough money and research, maybe we can find a solution to ALS, to cancer, to any of these horrible diseases. Thank you for your love for your own friends and connections that have motivated and continue to inspire you. And thank you for joining us today. We look forward to your concert and hope many of our listeners who are in the Salt Lake Valley will take advantage of the opportunity to attend, to encourage these young people in sharing their talents in such a meaningful way. And to our listeners, we are grateful for you for tuning in again today. We hope that you've subscribed to our podcast on your favorite platform. If you're willing, please go give us a rating and a review. It helps us to get the show out there and also know where we can improve. And as you're listening, if you or someone you know has a real story about real life that you're willing to share, please send us an email at rrpodcast@ksl.com or find us on Facebook at Relentlessly Resilient or Instagram at Relentlessly Resilient Podcast.
I want to make just one more plug to BeatALSbenefit.com is where you'll find your tickets. That's www.beatalsbenefit.com. Go purchase your tickets, go support this, and join our community in such a great cause. Remember, whatever you're doing today, be kind. You have no idea the struggles others are dealing with in their life. Have a great day.